In at number 5 we have the Soyuz 11. On June 6, the cosmonauts Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov and Viktor Patsayev were launched into space aboard Soyuz 11 on a mission to dock and enter Salyut 1, the Soviet space station that had been placed in orbit in April. The mission's goal was to set a record for the longest time spent in space. The spacecraft successfully docked with the station and the cosmonauts spent 23 days orbiting the Earth. On June 30th, they left Salyut 1 and began re-entry procedures. When they fired the explosive bolts to separate the Soyuz 11 re-entry capsule from another stage of the spacecraft, a critical valve was jerked open. 100 miles above the Earth, the capsule was suddenly exposed to the nearly pressureless environment of space. As the capsule rapidly depressurized, Patsayev tried to close the valve by hand but failed. Minutes later, the cosmonauts were dead. They became the first people to ever die in space. The last message that they sent to Earth was them trying to scream for help, but they couldn't due to the loss of pressure. All they heard from the crew was them gasping for air and then popping sounds from the air in their lungs expanding. The spacecraft landed itself perfectly on Earth, fully intact. When it was opened, they found the remains of the crew, with blood dripping from their ears and nose, and their skin had turned blue due to the lack of oxygen. Not many today have heard the recording, but it is sure to send chills down anyone's spine hearing these poor men last few minutes in space. In at number 4 we have WOW. In 1977, the sound of extraterrestrials were heard by human ears for the very first time. The WOW signal was detected by astronomer Jerry Eman using Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Telescope. It is a radio signal detector that was pointed at a group of stars called Chi Sagittarii in the constellation Sagittarius. When scanning the skies around the stars, Eman captured a 72-second burst of radio waves. He circled the reading and wrote "Wow" next to it, hence the signal's name. He was desperately searching for the signal to get a second reading, but he never found it again. Over the last 40 years, the signal has been cited as evidence that we are not alone in the galaxy. Experts and laypeople alike believe that finally we had evidence of alien life. The WOW signal is the strongest signal we have ever received from space. We may never know who or what caused the signal, but it is the strongest proof Earth has ever had that there is something else out there. Hopefully, whatever it is, it's peaceful or like Earth. In at number 3 we have Lost Cosmonaut. The Lost Cosmonauts are subject of a theory alleging that some Soviet cosmonauts went to outer space, but their existence has never been publicly acknowledged by either the Soviet or Russian space authorities. The Soviet Union attempted to launch human spaceflights before Yuri Gagarin's first spaceflight, and those cosmonauts on board died in those attempts. Two brothers who were former amateur radio operators made audio recordings which support the theory that the Soviet space program covered up cosmonaut deaths in the 1960s. One of the recordings in question is from November 1963. The recording is of a woman who died on a solo mission into space. In the recording you can hear her screaming. She is shouting about how the capsule is heating up. You can hear her screaming it is getting hot. She is frantically looking for someone to help her, but once she was up there she was on her own. It is believed the capsule burned up on re-entry and the woman died. When asked about the recording, the Soviets claimed that the space mission was unmanned and no woman died during re-entry. The evidence seems to prove this wrong, and their denial proves the possibility of the cover-up. In at number 2, sounds of Saturn. The ringed planet and its moon Enceladus have a lot to say to each other. Though it's been gone for nearly a year, the Cassini spacecraft continues to fuel new studies of Saturn and its many moons. In particular, Cassini's unique and close-up view of the system during its grand finale orbits produced data that have revealed how plasma waves moving outward from the planet interact with both its rings and its moons. Now, in a video produced by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory using this data, you can tune into the sounds of Saturn. The radio emission generated by these plasma waves as they travel along the invisible magnetic field lines linking the planet with its icy moon Enceladus. As it plunged closer to the planet during its grand finale on September 2nd, 2017, Cassini's radio and plasma wave science instrument picked up electromagnetic waves as it traveled through the Enceladus flux tube, a sort of conduit between the moon and the planet, bounded by magnetic field lines and through which charged particles can flow back and forth. The waves fall in the range of human hearing, and scientists have now amplified them into the audio file below, compressing about 16 minutes worth of data down to 28.5 seconds of scary space sounds. Finally, in at number 1 we have Milky Way Signal. A fast radio burst was detected from within our galaxy for the very first time. We may be closer to uncovering its origin. On April 28, 2020, 2 ground-based radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves. It only lasted a mere millisecond, but for astonished astronomers it was a major discovery, representing the first time a fast radio burst, or FRB, had ever been detected so close to Earth. Located just 30,000 light-years from our planet, the event was firmly within the Milky Way, and it was, to all intents and purposes, almost impossible to miss. The Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment certainly had no problems picking it up. I quote, "We weren't even looking in the right direction and we still saw it loud and clear in our peripheral vision," one of them noted. One of the major problems with detecting FRBs, aside from most of them having been so far away, is that they are so fleeting. They've been and gone in the blink of an eye despite being 100 million times more powerful than the sun. They can release as much energy in a few thousandths of a second as the sun in 100 years. Ideally, astronomers would discover an object and focus one or more different telescopes at it, but the ephemeral nature of these bursts removes any such opportunity. But despite these challenges, astronomers have succeeded in building up a bank of knowledge about FRBs, most of which has been based on the dozens of recorded events from beyond our own galaxy. For starters, we know they are bright flashes of radio light lasting for microseconds to milliseconds. All sky searches for them also suggest that thousands of these bursts occur in the sky every single day. It'll take many years of research to understand exactly what these signals mean. Until then, we can just wonder about what is out there among the galaxy.
Number 5 on this list is Julia. According to Wikipedia, Julia is a sound recorded on March 1st, 1999 by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. NOAA said the source of the sound was most likely a large iceberg that had run aground off Antarctica. It was large enough to be heard over the entire equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array with a duration of about 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Due to the uncertainty of the arrival azimuth, the point of origin could only be narrowed to between Bransford Straits and Cape Adar. The most accepted explanation is that a massive iceberg scraped along the ground, but in truth, it could be anything. This was a one-off sound, so we'll likely never know for sure, but an iceberg, a massive animal, some underground volcanoes, maybe even tectonic plates shifting, all of these are potential explanations for why this sound may have come about, and none of them are great. This sound was huge, and if this is what it sounds like for tectonic plates to shift, then they're probably shifting around in ways that we don't really need them to be doing right now. Also, there was a rumor that NASA had photographs of the body of water that was suspected, and that there was a massive shadow in it. People believe that they may have been able to capture a photo of some giant creature down there, but don't want to reveal such information to the public. If the creature is as big as people think, then I kinda understand why. Number 4 on this list is the Upsweep. Schneider writes, "Upsweep is an unidentified sound that's existed at least since the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory began recording SOSUS, an underwater sound surveillance system with listening stations around the world in 1991. The sound consists of a long train of narrow-band upsweeping sounds of several seconds duration each, the laboratory reports. The source location is difficult to identify, but it's in the Pacific around the halfway point between Australia and South America. Upsweep changes with the seasons, becoming loudest in spring and autumn, though it isn't clear why. The leading theory is that it's related to volcanic activity. This sound or signal is very unique because it keeps coming back and changes with the weather. Frankly, I don't really understand how this could possibly be related to volcanic activity because the season is dictating how loud or soft the noise is. Why would the fact that we're in fall change anything about a volcano's activity and therefore the sound? Is it possible that this explanation is just an explanation of convenience, and the fact of the matter is no one really has any idea why this is happening? Or maybe even worse, they do know why it's happening and are just covering it up anyways. Number 3 on this list is the hum. The hum is one of the most interesting signals from the deep ocean that we've ever run into. Caitlin Schneider writes, "The hum has been recorded on several occasions, mostly during the last 50 years or so. In these cases, there have been reports of a relentless and troubling low-frequency humming noise that can only be heard by a certain portion of the population. It's difficult to pinpoint when instances of the hum began, but it's been well documented since the 1970s, and since then, cases have popped up all over the world from Ontario, Canada to Taos, New Mexico to Bristol, England to Largs, Scotland, and Auckland, New Zealand. In most instances, the affected group only makes up 2% of the population, but for those individuals, the hum is largely inescapable and impossible to track. Those affected report never having heard noises before and say the hum is generally heard indoors and becomes louder at night. It's also most common in rural and suburban areas and among people between age 55 and 70. Scientists have long investigated the cause of the drone, occasionally tracing it to industrial equipment emitting particular frequencies. For the most part though, the sound has left the world completely puzzled. The list of other possible culprits is long and wide-ranging. Wireless communication devices, power or gas lines, electromagnetic radiation, radio waves, earth tremors, or the ocean are all suspects. Because the hum appears and disappears, and because the cause may vary from case to case, the phenomenon still baffles researchers. At this point, a few things are clear. The hum is real and likely a byproduct of 21st century living. They think that this sound might come from the ocean, but they're also really not that sure. This is one of those ones that just really doesn't make any sense. Caitlin writes at the end there that it might be a product of 21st century living, but I frankly don't understand that. How is our way of living causing this hum to come from the ocean all around the globe at totally random times? Also, why is it that people from the ages of 55 to 70 are more affected by this? It's stuff like this that reminds me that we aren't as smart as we think we are. Sometimes I think that we're so advanced that we have it all figured out, but then I'm reminded that there's just this massive hum that occasionally happens which nobody knows why. What it means or what it could do is all a mystery, which honestly adds to the scare factor. Number 2 on this list is Skyquakes. So when you hear Skyquakes, you probably don't think that they have anything to do with the water, but they actually do. Caitlin Schneider says that Skyquakes, or unexplained sonic booms, have been heard around the world for the last 200 years or so, usually near bodies of water. These head scratchers have been reported on the Ganges in India, the East Coast and inland Finger Lakes of the US, near the North Sea, and in Australia, Japan, and Italy. The sounds, which has been described as mimicking massive thunder or cannon fire, has been chalked up to everything from meteors entering the atmosphere to gas escaping from vents in the Earth's surface, or the gas exploding after being trapped underwater as a result of biological decay, to earthquakes, military aircraft, underwater caves collapsing, and even a possible byproduct of solar and or Earth-based magnetic activity. So there's a lot of explanations there, but I want to circle back to the one about gas getting trapped underwater. Apparently the gas gets trapped and then causes an explosion. Well, what if a ton of gas gets trapped? What if so much gas gets trapped that the explosion doesn't just cause a sound, but actually causes a catastrophic event? It leads to a huge tsunami that just wipes out an entire city. If this is the explanation for the sound, then I don't see why that isn't possible. Which would mean that whenever we hear such a thing, it's just a potential natural disaster waiting to happen. All that makes it a pretty scary sound if you ask me. And finally, number 1 is the bloop. Potentially one of the most infamous sounds ever recorded from the ocean, the bloop has kept experts guessing for years. In 1997, a super low frequency but massively powerful sound was heard in multiple spots around the globe. Experts think that it originated off the coast of South Africa, but are not 100% sure. The fact that it was heard repeatedly over and over again during the summer of 1997, but then was never heard of after that. No one really knows what caused this massive sound, and maybe the most terrifying part is that scientists haven't ruled out something organic. Something organic means something living. A massive, massive creature that would break records for anything that we've ever seen before. Far larger than a blue whale, the largest known creature on the planet. This would be groundbreaking if it was something organic and would totally change the way we look at the ocean. Conspiracy theorists have thought that the government does know what it is and is actually keeping it under wraps for fear of how the public will respond. Some people even believe that it might be Cthulhu, the ancient god written about in the Lovecraftian universe. Now once again, the most accepted explanation is that of a massive iceberg scraping the ground, but if that's what caused it, then why did it keep happening over and over again? Comment down below what you guys think is the true cause of this bloop, because I truly have no idea.
Coming in at number 5, SHGB02 plus 14A. Yeah, that's a mouthful. This is an astronomical radio source and is a candidate in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence discovered in March 2003 by SETI at home. Now, the source was observed 3 times for a total of about a minute at a frequency of about 1420 MHz, one of the frequencies in the Waterhole region, which is theorized to be a good candidate for frequencies used by extraterrestrial life to broadcast contact signals. Now, the region it hailed from is usually devoid of any nearby stars. The closest star systems in approximate region of the signal include the binary star G7311A and B, which are 106.1 light years from the Sun. Although the unrelated star G7310 is only 108.7 light years away, less than 3 light years from G7311A and B, all of these stars are red dwarfs, which is the smallest and coolest kind of star on the main sequence and are by far the most common type in the Milky Way. Now, there are a number of puzzling features of this candidate which have led to a large amount of skepticism. The source itself is located between the constellations Pisces and Aries, a direction in which no stars are observed within 1000 light years from Earth. It is also a very weak signal. The frequency of the signal has a rapid drift, changing between 8 and 37 Hz per second. Now, here's where things get interesting. If the cause is Doppler shift, it would indicate emissions from a planet rotating nearly 40 times faster on its axis than the Earth. Each time the signal was detected, it was again at about 1420 MHz, the original frequency before any drift. Of course, there are many explanations for the signal, but many are purporting an artifact of random chance, cosmic noise, or even a glitch. I'm here for aliens though. I always am. Coming in at 4, FRBs. One of the biggest mysteries out there in the universe is, of course, is there something other than just us, or are we alone in the universe? That's the question. Well, as of August 14, 2019, we have inched closer to an answer. An astonishing 8 new repeating audio radio signals known as fast radio bursts, aka FRBs, have been detected flaring from deep space. Very creepy indeed. At the beginning of 2019, just one of these signals was reported to flash repeatedly. However, in January, scientists reported a second repeating one. This means we're beginning to build a statistical database of repeaters, which would help astronomers figure out what these signals actually mean. These FRBs are perplexing and are detected as spikes in radio data lasting just a few milliseconds, but in that time they can discharge more energy than 500 million suns. I quote, "Just as some volcanoes are more active than others, and you can think a volcano is dormant because it has not erupted in a long time, this can be said about FRBs. There is also a frequency drift. The first 2 repeaters showed a downward drift in frequency, with each burst getting successfully lower, kind of like a sad trombone sound effect. As of right now, scientists are attempting to figure out where the FRBs are hailing from and what exactly the signals mean. Perhaps it is from extraterrestrial life, telling us they're out there, or perhaps it's something far more sinister." Coming in at number 3, Tabby's star. Also known as KIC 8462852, Voyager star or WTF star is an F-type main sequence star located in the constellation Cygnus, approximately 1470 light years from Earth. Unusual light fluctuations of the star, including up to a 22% dimming in brightness, were discovered by citizen scientists as part of the Planet Hunters project. In September 2015, astronomers and citizen scientists associated with the project posted a preprint of an article describing the data and possible interpretations. The discovery was made from data collected by the Kepler Space Telescope, which observed changes in the brightness of distant stars to detect exoplanets. Now, Tabby star is not the only star that has large irregular dimmings, but all other such stars are young stellar objects called YSO dippers, which have different dimming patterns. Now, several hypotheses have been proposed to explain the star's irregular changes in brightness, as measured by its light curve, but none to date fully explain all aspects of the curve. One explanation is that an uneven ring of dust orbits Tabby's star. Another explanation is that the star's luminosity is modulated by changes in the efficiency of heat transport to its photosphere. One external obscuration is required. Now, a third hypothesis, based on a lack of observed infrared light, posits a swarm of cold, dusty comet fragments in a highly eccentric orbit. However, the notion that disturbed comets from such a cloud could exist in high enough numbers to obscure 22% of the star's observed luminosity has been doubted. It has also been hypothesized that the changes in brightness could be signs of activity associated with intelligent extraterrestrial life constructing a Dyson swarm. However, further analysis based on data through the end of 2017 showed wavelength-dependent dimming consistent with dust, not an opaque object such as an alien megastructure. Again, I'm still going with aliens, so is aliens. And finally coming in at number 1, the Judica-Cordiglia Brothers. The Judica-Cordiglia Brothers are two Italian former amateur radio operators who made audio recordings that allegedly support the conspiracy theory that the Soviet space program covered up cosmonaut deaths in the 1960s. The brothers claim to have acquired recordings of several secret Soviet space missions that ended in tragedy and mystery. This has of course generated public interest for more than 50 years, despite there being a large number of detailed rebuttals to the brothers' claims. In the 60s, the brothers claim to have heard radio communications taken from the secret space missions, including the dying sounds of a suffocating lost cosmonaut. One of their most famous recordings was made on November 28, 1960. After about an hour of listening to static, the brothers recognized an SOS signal that seemed to be moving away from the Earth. In 1963, the brothers claimed they recorded the voice of a female cosmonaut entering the Earth's atmosphere in a malfunctioning spacecraft. In the recording, she is heard to have cried out, "I'm hot," as it burnt up. In total, the Judica-Cordiglia Brothers released 9 recordings over a period of 4 years. The details were as follows. May 1960, a crewed spacecraft reports it is going off course. November 28, 1960, a faint SOS Morse code signal is sent from another troubled spacecraft leaving Earth's orbit. February 1961, a cosmonaut is audibly recorded suffocating to death. April 1961, a capsule is recorded orbiting the Earth 3 times before re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, days before Yuri Gagarin made his historic flight. May 1961, an orbiting spacecraft makes an appeal for help after going out of control. October 61, a cosmonaut loses control of his spacecraft, which veers off into deep space. November 1962, a space capsule misjudges re-entry, bouncing off the Earth's atmosphere and out into space. November 1963, a female cosmonaut dies during re-entry. April 1964, another cosmonaut is killed when his capsule burns up in the Earth's atmosphere. Since the 60s, critical analysis of the recordings has cast doubt on their provenance. For instance, audio transcripts reveal that none of the cosmonauts were supposed to be Soviet Air Force pilots, followed standard communication protocols such as identifying themselves when speaking or using correct technical terminology. Fishy fishy. Still, I have doubts. I think something greater is going on here.